to welcome to the show Chris Lowe from ESPN covering the world of college football. Chris, thanks for the time as always. And you've covered Tennessee, Florida a time or two. How would you describe the opportunity here, what this game could potentially mean for Tennessee with the Vols hosting the Gators on Saturday?
I would say it's probably the most optimism I've seen around the program, the fan base, everybody connected to Tennessee that they're going to beat Florida. And all the times that I've been around this rivalry firsthand, which goes back to the mid-'90s. Now, you know, when Peyton was there in 97 and even before, those were great teams. Those were top 5 teams every year. So, you know, I sort of throw those games out the book because, you know, you 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, even all the way into 2001, those teams, I think just about every matchup, if I'm not mistaken, was a top 5 or top 10 matchup. This was a little different because Florida's got some warts. They got some holes. They got a first-year coach. They got a quarterback who's really, really talented, but he's still trying to learn how to play the position. Tennessee's at home. Tennessee can score with anybody, playing with a lot of confidence. Got a coach who's come in and really steadied the program. And I think, you know, you just feel that momentum building. So I would say that there's more confidence than I can remember in a long, long time that Tennessee's going to win the game. But there's a big but there. I have seen so many years in this rivalry where I thought, sort of having a feel about both teams in this series and this rivalry, that I thought, you know what, Tennessee's going to win this game. They're a better football team. And just sort of everything points to Tennessee winning. And Tennessee has been masterful at finding ways to lose this football game. I think that's the thing, if you've been around this series, that sort of sticks in the back of your head.
No reason to have to look for bulletin board material, Chris, in my opinion. I know Bill Napiers said what he said about just, hey, we've played in tough places. It's football at the end of the day. You don't want your quarterback to get too ahead of himself. And I know Tennessee fans are going to take that as a diss to the crowd noise. And that's fine. They can do that all they want to. That means the place is going to get loud as it can. But this game doesn't need that, Chris. These players on this football team, they haven't beaten Florida. 2 years ago, Kyle Trask comes up here and puts on an offensive clinic. So you don't need the trash talk. There's a lot of pressure on this game. Do you feel like this is the biggest game in Josh Heupel's coaching career?
Well, I'd say, first of all, that Billy Napiers certainly didn't mean that as trash talk. He was asked about, I think the direct question was Anthony Richardson going on the road for the first time to play, and he said, hey, he's played within himself. He can't, you know, it's the same game, and I'm going to change the rules. And I think that's sort of where he was coming from. And the other thing I would say is, man, it's going to be loud and rowdy at Neyland Stadium on Saturday, regardless of what he said. I mean, he could have said Neyland Stadium is the greatest place on earth to play a game. It's the loudest place I've ever been in. I grew up in Tennessee. It's just a magical place. Well, guess what? It's still going to be loud.
Yep.
It's still going to be noisy and rowdy. So whatever he says, I don't think that matters much. I never thought that kind of stuff matters a whole lot. I mean, you played. Did it matter much to you once you got in the second quarter?
It might matter for about 5 minutes in the first quarter, but after that,
right,
it's about executing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's sort of where, if you're a Tennessee fan, you like Josh Heupel's steadiness, the way his teams prepare, the way his teams has sort of been able to steady the ship, even when they haven't played well. They've had bad quarters or bad halves, especially this year. I mean, they were really pretty awful there for a stretch against Pittsburgh. And, you know, to have a punt blocked and fumble a punt and turn the football over on the road, still come back and win against the Pitt team, I think is solid. I don't think Pitt is an upper division SEC team. But I think that says something about it. But, you know, answer your question, yeah, I think this is probably the biggest game Josh will have faced. And we'll probably say that here in a few weeks when Alabama comes to Knoxville, when they go to Georgia. Here's why. Man, if you're really going to get this program back to where all Tennessee fans want it, you got to start beating these teams. I mean, I always go back to our good friend Doug Dickey. He said it over and over again. In Tennessee, you always got to beat Georgia, Florida, and Alabama at least as much as they beat you. And Tennessee hasn't come close to doing that in a decade and a half. So if you want to show that your program's on that right trajectory, that your recruiting improving, your development of players is improving, your ability to win big games, big situations are improving, then this is a game you got to win. Tennessee's a better team than Florida. They're playing at home. You've got a coach who's got a year ahead. He's a year ahead of Napier as far as Josh being 1 year ahead in coaching his program. You've got an experienced quarterback who's been just absolutely fantastic since he took over and started. Did you see the stats? 42 total touchdowns, 2 picks, and has completed nearly 70% of his passes since he took over the starting job. Of course, I'm talking about Hendon Hooker.
Yep.
So to have that guy with that experience who's been on big stages in these kind of games is worth a touchdown and a half. So everything points to Tennessee winning this game. They're a better team. So, yeah, I think it's a big game because if you don't win it, then what's going to be the narrative? Well, same old Tennessee. You just can't get over the hump. So, absolutely, I think it's probably the biggest game that he's faced because we don't have a big body of work. This is how many games has he coached? 16 games, 15 games? But they get bigger from here. And certainly if he wins this with Swain, then there are going to be a lot of big games in the next month.
What's the concerns for Florida? I know it's Bill Napier's first year. You got a chance to look at his program, speak to him. What's some of the weaknesses that you see for Florida that they're going to struggle with this season? And they have already so far, and the Kentucky loss has some weaknesses going to show up in the Utah win. But what's some of the weaknesses for Florida this season?
Everyone's going to point to Richardson and the fact that they haven't thrown a touchdown pass and he's turned the ball over a bunch the last 2 weeks, which he has. As I said, I think he's still he's going to be a really, really good player. He's just learning how to play the position, and that's going to come. Now, Tennessee hopes that doesn't come this week, but I think a bigger issue for Florida is that they're just not as good in the front seven as they've been traditionally. I mean, you go back to all these Tennessee-Florida matchups, so Florida's better teams. Maybe those years when Florida wasn't just great at quarterback. The thing you could always count on out of Florida is they were nasty up front on defense. Great linebackers, great edge rushers, didn't give up a lot of yards rushing, could change the game with their front seven. I don't think this group is at that level. And that's another reason I think Tennessee will be able to run the football, will be able to open up some things and let sort of Hendon Hooker do his thing. Again, that's what it looks like coming on paper, Swain. But I know that was a concern for Florida before the season. And I think when you look at the way Utah ran the football and some of the other things that happened to this point, they are just not elite in their front seven like Florida almost always is.
All right, Chris, we'll get you out of here on this. It's a Tuesday, and we still don't know status on several players, may not until kickoff. But do you think Tennessee wins this Saturday at home?
Yeah, I think they win. And I do think that they probably, or there's real concern whether Cedric Tillman plays in this game with an ankle injury. I do think Jabari Small will play. But even if Tillman doesn't play, I think Tennessee is better across the board. I think they've got more momentum. I think there's a confidence about this program that they haven't had in a while. And yes, I do think Tennessee wins. And I think here's what I'll go on the limb. I think they even cover the spread, which is 10? It's up to 10.5 points now, which is the most Tennessee's ever been favored in this game, going back to I think the 70s. So yes, I think Tennessee wins. I think Tennessee's a better football team.
There you have it. Hey, Chris, great information, great insight. Thanks so much for the time. As always, it'll be a big one. You know that on Saturday at Neyland Stadium. Thanks so much for the time today.
Outstanding, guys. Always good to catch up.
Chris Lowe, ESPN.com, covering the world of college football, covering the SEC, and he knows what's going on with Tennessee and Florida. A guy who knows about the series as well.